At a house party, I opened a guest room door and saw my fiancée shirtless with a guy pulling up his jeans. She said, "You can't prove anything." When I turned the camera toward them, I did not even want to go to the party. It was one of those things Sophia insisted on because appearances mattered to her more than comfort. The host was Nina, someone she worked with occasionally, someone important enough that skipping would lead to questions later. Sophia framed it as networking, social hygiene, staying visible. I framed it as standing in a loud house holding a plastic cup while pretending to care about conversations that would evaporate by Monday morning. Still, I went, because we were engaged, and because compromise had quietly become my role. The house was already full when we arrived. Music pulsed through the walls with no rhythm I could follow. People leaned too close when they talked. Someone had opened all the windows despite the cold, and the smell of alcohol mixed with perfume and sweat in a way that made my head ache. Sophia disappeared almost immediately after greeting Nina. She kissed my cheek, told me not to hover, and vanished into the crowd like she always did when she wanted to be seen without me. At first, I did not think anything of it. I talked with Ethan near the kitchen, listened to him complain about his job, nodded at people whose names I half remembered. I refilled my drink once, then switched to water. Time slipped forward in fragments. Laughter spiked and died. Music changed. New faces arrived. Old ones drifted out. After a while, I realized I had not seen Sophia in a long time. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. I scanned the living room, the kitchen, the backyard through the sliding doors. Nothing. I asked Nina casually if she had seen her. Nina hesitated before answering, which was the first moment something tightened in my chest. She said Sophia was around somewhere and turned back to her conversation too quickly. That hesitation stayed with me. I walked down the hallway that led away from the noise. The house was large enough to feel disorienting, with a narrow corridor branching into several guest rooms. The music faded with each step, replaced by muffled laughter and the hum of voices behind closed doors. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself people disappeared at parties all the time. The first guest room was empty. Bedmate. Lights off. The second door was closed. I knocked once, lightly, more out of habit than intention. There was movement inside. A pause. No answer. I opened the door. Sophia was standing near the bed without her shirt on. Her hair was loose, her face flushed. A man I did not recognize was bent forward slightly, pulling his jeans up from his knees. His belt hung loose in his hands. The bed behind them was rumpled, the sheets twisted in a way that did not come from sitting. For a second, none of us moved. Then everything happened at once. Sophia spun toward me, her eyes sharp, calculating, not startled. The man straightened, glanced at me, then at her, as if waiting for instruction. My brain registered details it had no use for. The open zipper, the half-empty glass on the nightstand. The door behind me still open to the hallway. I did not ask what was happening. I did not ask for an explanation. I said her name, loudly enough that it carried into the hall. The man took a step back, hands raised slightly, not in apology, but in annoyance. He looked annoyed to be interrupted, not ashamed. Sophia reached for the shirt on the chair, but did not put it on. She held it against her chest like a prop. She told me to lower my voice. I told her to explain. She looked past me, then back at my face, and her expression shifted into something smooth and controlled. She said I was jumping to conclusions. She said nothing had happened. She said I could not prove anything. The way she said it was worse than if she had yelled. The man finally spoke, asking if there was a problem. His tone suggested he expected me to be the problem. Footsteps approached. Someone laughed in the hallway, then went quiet. Nina appeared at the door, eyes widening when she took in the scene. Ethan followed her, stopping short when he saw Sophia shirtless and the man adjusting his clothes. The hallway filled with bodies and silence. I pulled my phone from my pocket without thinking. My hands were steady in a way that surprised me. I turned the camera on and held it up, framing all three of them. Sophia noticed immediately. Her eyes flicked to the screen. She stepped toward me, telling me to stop, telling me I was embarrassing her. I told her she had already done that herself. She accused me of invading her privacy. She said this was a misunderstanding. She said I was acting insecure. The words came out sharp, practiced, layered with just enough volume to draw attention from people gathering behind Nina. The man took another step back, distancing himself from her now that the room was no longer private. He muttered something about not wanting drama. He looked at me with a half-smile that made my jaw tighten. Someone behind me lifted their own phone. Then another. The room felt smaller with every breath. Sophia tried to grab my phone. I stepped back. She froze, recalibrating. Her face shifted again, eyes glistening now, voice trembling just enough to suggest hurt. She asked how I could do this to her in front of everyone. She asked why I always assumed the worst. I did not raise my voice. I did not move toward her. I simply kept the camera pointed forward. Ethan said my name quietly, as if trying to ground me. Nina told people to give us space, though no one listened. The music in the living room kept playing, absurdly upbeat, leaking down the hallway like static from another world. Sophia told everyone I was jealous. She said I had been controlling lately. She said the engagement had been stressful. She said the man was helping her calm down. She never once said he should leave. The man took that cue and slipped past Nina, buttoning his shirt as he went. He avoided my eyes as he passed. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered. Sophia watched him go, then turned back to me, her face hardening. She told me this conversation was over. She told me to stop filming. She told me to leave if I was going to cause a scene. I looked at the people watching. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Some looked curious. A few looked entertained. No one looked surprised. That realization hit me harder than the sight in the room. I lowered the phone, but did not turn it off. I told Sophia I was leaving. I told her we would talk later. I did not ask her to come with me. I did not ask her anything. She said nothing as I walked past her. The hallway seemed longer on the way out. Conversations resumed behind me in fragments, voices overlapping, stories already forming. Outside, cold air hit my face, sharp and grounding. I stood on the front lawn for a moment, listening to the party continue without me, and felt something settle into place. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. This was confidence. I walked away from the house without looking back, knowing the party was ending for me, but something much larger had just started. I did not go home. That decision came naturally, without debate, like stepping out of traffic after realizing a car would not slow down. I walked until the noise from the house disappeared, then stood under a streetlight and stared at my phone. Messages were already coming in. Short ones. Careful ones. People asking if I was okay without asking what happened. People who already knew enough. Ethan found me before I decided where to go. He had followed at a distance, not calling my name, not trying to stop me. He offered his couch without making it sound like charity. I accepted because I needed somewhere neutral, somewhere that did not carry the smell of her shampoo or the weight of shared plans. The ride was quiet. Not tense, just heavy. Ethan did not fill the silence. That mattered. When we got to his place, I sat on the edge of the couch while he poured water into a glass and placed it in front of me like an anchor. I drank it without tasting it. My phone buzzed again. Sophia's name lit the screen. I did not answer. She tried again. Then she stopped. That was when Nina called. She did not ask how I was. She asked where I was. Her voice was low, controlled, stripped of party warmth. She told me people were leaving in clusters, not pairs. She told me the mood had shifted from shock to speculation in less than 20 minutes. She told me Sophia was still there, still explaining, still shaping the story. I asked Nina what story that was. She paused. Then she told me Sophia said I had walked in on nothing, that I had overreacted, that I had humiliated her in front of colleagues. She said Sophia was angry, not embarrassed. She said Sophia looked prepared. Prepared was the word that stayed with me. After the call, Ethan asked if I wanted to talk. I said not yet. I needed to see what came next. As if summoned, my phone vibrated again. This time it was a message, not a call. Sophia wrote that we needed to talk calmly. She wrote that tonight was not what it looked like. She wrote that I had made things worse by recording. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not apologize. I put the phone face down. 10 minutes later, another message arrived. Longer this time. She said relationships were built on trust. She said airing private moments publicly was a betrayal. She said she had expected better from me. Ethan exhaled slowly when he saw my expression. He did not ask to read the messages. He did not need to. Then something unexpected happened. Victor texted me. I did not have his number saved. He introduced himself anyway, as if we were strangers meeting under neutral circumstances. He wrote that things had gotten out of hand. He wrote that Sophia had told him we were on a break. He wrote that it would be best for everyone if we kept this quiet. The audacity of the message made my chest feel hollow rather than hot. It was not threatening. It was advisory, as if he were doing me a favor by suggesting silence. I did not respond. Instead, I opened my banking app. I had never felt the need to monitor shared finances closely. We had clear roles. I paid most fixed expenses. She handled planning, deposits, coordination. It had felt efficient, balanced, adult. That illusion cracked within minutes. I noticed a wedding-related account that I did not recognize. I noticed transfers I had approved months ago, but had not followed. I noticed my name absent from access permissions. I noticed timelines that no longer aligned with what she had told me. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just quiet redirection. When Nina called again, her voice sounded different, sharper. She told me she needed to tell me something before it came from someone else. She told me Sophia had spoken openly earlier in the evening, before I arrived. She told me Sophia had joked about how useful the engagement was professionally. She told me she had laughed it off at the time. That laughter now felt like an accomplice. I asked Nina who else had heard that conversation. She named 2 people. One of them worked with Sophia. One of them reported to someone Sophia was trying to impress. I thanked her and ended the call. The night stretched forward, dense and unyielding. Messages trickled in from people I barely knew. Some offered support. Some offered curiosity disguised as concern. One offered a screenshot of a group chat I was not part of, where speculation had already hardened into opinion. By midnight, Sophia changed tactics. She stopped messaging me directly and started messaging Ethan instead. She asked him where I was. She told him she was worried. She told him I was acting irrationally. She asked him to talk sense into me. Ethan showed me the messages without comment. I nodded. I told him not to respond. At 1 in the morning, Sophia showed up outside Ethan's building. We did not open the door. She knocked. Then she knocked harder. Then she rang the buzzer until another tenant yelled at her to stop. When she realized she would not be let in, she sent a final message saying this silence was proving her point. That sentence stayed with me long after her footsteps faded down the stairwell. I slept badly, waking every hour to check my phone, even though I knew nothing new would appear. When morning came, it did not bring clarity. It brought volume. Someone had uploaded a short clip from the hallway. Not the whole scene, just enough to imply everything. Sophia's voice was clear in it. Her denial was audible. My presence was undeniable. By the time I woke up fully, Laura had messaged me. I knew her only vaguely. She worked with Sophia. We had met once at a work function. Her message was cautious, respectful, deliberate. She said she thought I deserved to know something. She said she had stayed quiet before because she assumed Sophia would tell me herself. She told me Sophia had been presenting herself as emotionally unattached at work for months. She told me Sophia had framed the engagement as complicated, more logistical than romantic. She told me Victor was not a surprise to her. That was the moment the story stopped being about betrayal and started being about construction. Sophia had not fallen into anything. She had built something parallel and expected it to remain invisible. I replied to Laura with a simple acknowledgement. I did not ask questions. I did not need more details. The shape of it was clear enough. Sophia called again. I answered this time. She did not yell. She did not cry. She asked if I had slept. She said she hated that things had escalated. She said people were being unfair. She said she felt attacked. I asked her one question. I asked her how long she had been preparing for the engagement to end. Silence stretched between us. Not confused silence. Calculating silence. She asked what I meant. I told her I knew about the accounts. I told her I knew about the conversations at work. I told her I knew Victor was not an anomaly. Her tone changed instantly. She told me I was twisting things. She told me planning for contingencies was smart. She told me love did not mean blindness. She told me she had needed security. I ended the call before she could finish reframing. By noon, the party felt like a distant spark compared to the fires spreading through the rest of my life. People were choosing sides without consulting me. Stories were evolving without my input. Sophia was losing control not because I was attacking, but because too many voices were filling the space she once dominated. That afternoon, I realized something crucial. I did not need to expose anything. It was already exposed. The party had not been the explosion. It had been the match. And the fire was still climbing. By the 3rd day, the story no longer belonged to any of us. That realization arrived quietly, not as a shock, but as a pressure shift, like weather changing before a storm. People were no longer asking me what happened. They were telling me what they believed happened. Each version carried its own logic, its own villain, its own convenient omissions. Sophia was no longer speaking only to friends or co-workers. She was speaking to anyone who would listen. I stayed off social media. That decision was not strategic. It was instinctive. Every time I opened an app, I felt the pull to correct, to explain, to reshape what had already started solidifying. Silence felt risky, but participation felt worse. Ethan noticed the shift before I did. He said Sophia had stopped trying to reach me directly and had started narrating around me instead. She was no longer reacting. She was producing. Nina confirmed it later that afternoon. She told me Sophia had called her twice, asking for statements, not support. Sophia wanted people to remember specific details, wanted phrasing aligned, wanted timelines softened. Nina told me she refused. That refusal ended their friendship in under a minute. The speed of that break was unsettling. That evening, Sophia finally asked to meet. She did not frame it as reconciliation. She framed it as closure, as if that word could be claimed unilaterally. She suggested a cafe near her apartment, neutral territory, visible enough to discourage scenes. I agreed because avoiding the meeting would only give her more space to define it. She arrived first. She looked composed, polished, carefully ordinary. There were no signs of strain on her face, only determination. When she saw me, She smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. She did not stand. She gestured for me to sit. She began by saying she was disappointed. She said she had expected me to handle things privately. She said I had embarrassed her professionally. She said the video, even short and incomplete, had altered how people saw her. She spoke as if reputation damage had occurred in a vacuum, unrelated to actions. I let her speak. When she finished, she folded her hands and waited for my response like someone accustomed to steering outcomes. I told her the engagement was over. I said it calmly. I did not explain. I did not justify. I did not soften it. For the first time since the party, she reacted instead of performed. Her expression tightened. Her jaw shifted. She asked if I was serious, not because she doubted it, but because she needed to measure how serious. She told me ending things publicly would hurt both of us. She told me we could reframe. She told me people moved on faster when stories stabilized. She told me she had already started repairing damage. That was when I understood something essential. She was not afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing momentum. I asked her directly if Victor was the only person. She laughed, short and sharp, then caught herself. She told me that question was irrelevant. She told me relationships evolved. She told me commitment did not mean isolation. She told me I was being old-fashioned. I stood up. She asked where I was going. I told her the conversation was finished. She reminded me we still had shared obligations. She reminded me of deposits, plans, expectations. She reminded me of how entangled our lives were. I told her disentanglement was already underway. The next escalation came faster than I expected. Laura contacted me again that night, this time not cautiously, but urgently. She told me Sophia's workplace had begun asking questions. Not formally, not legally, but socially. She told me Sophia had been inconsistent in her explanations. She told me the party footage had collided with months of prior claims. The contradiction was doing more damage than the footage ever could. Victor resurfaced briefly in the chaos, posting a photo with another woman, captioned vaguely, as if to signal availability, distance, irrelevance. The move backfired. People connected dots. People talked. He deleted the post within hours. Sophia tried to shift the pressure toward me. She told mutual friends I was threatening her. She told them I was withholding property. She told them I was unstable. The problem with that strategy was scale. Too many people had seen too much too quickly. When she sent a message accusing me of ruining her future, I realized she had finally lost control of the sequence. She was reacting now, not directing. The formal end came through a lawyer 2 days later. I did not initiate it out of aggression. I initiated it because clarity mattered. Assets were listed. Access was revoked. Boundaries were drawn. Everything was factual, unemotional, precise. Sophia responded with outrage, not surprise. She told me this was unnecessary. She told me lawyers escalated things. She told me I was proving I had planned this. That accusation almost made me laugh, not because it was absurd, but because it revealed projection so clearly. The social consequences landed unevenly, but decisively. Some friends stopped calling entirely. Some called once, then never again. Nina remained steady, quietly supportive, refusing to relay messages or interpret intent. Ethan absorbed pressure without forwarding it. Laura stepped back after saying what needed to be said. Sophia, meanwhile, tried to reclaim visibility. She attended events she knew I would not. She posted carefully curated photos. She framed herself as resilient, misunderstood, forward-looking. The strategy worked briefly, until it didn't. The problem with overlapping narratives is that they eventually intersect. A coworker contradicted her publicly during a meeting. Not maliciously, just factually. A mutual acquaintance corrected a detail she had exaggerated. A former friend declined to back her version when asked directly. Each moment alone meant little. Together, they eroded credibility. She called me one last time after that. Her voice was tight, controlled with effort. She asked me why I was doing this to her. She asked me why I could not let things settle. She asked me what I wanted. I told her I wanted nothing. That answer unsettled her more than anger ever could. She asked how I could walk away so easily. She asked if I ever cared. I told her caring did not obligate me to participate in fiction. When the call ended, I felt no relief. I felt resolution moving closer, heavy and inevitable. The climax was no longer approaching. It was unfolding, and there was nothing left to stop it. The collapse did not announce itself. There was no single moment when everything stopped. No dramatic silence. No final confrontation that felt cinematic. Instead, things simply failed to come back together. Conversations ended earlier than expected. Invitations stopped arriving. Plans dissolved without replacement. The damage settled in quietly, like dust after a demolition. The legal separation moved faster than Sophia expected. Once formal boundaries were drawn, the illusion of shared control evaporated. Accounts were separated. Access changed hands. Responsibilities redistributed. The process was clinical, efficient, and emotionally indifferent. That indifference unsettled her more than hostility ever could have. She tried to slow it down by questioning intent. She asked why everything had to happen so quickly. She accused me of acting out of spite. She framed decisiveness as cruelty. The problem with that framing was consistency. Nothing I did contradicted itself. Nothing escalated unnecessarily. There were no dramatic reversals to exploit. That steadiness became the final point of friction. Sophia lost leverage in stages. First, she lost the ability to define what had happened. People no longer asked her to explain. They drew their own conclusions based on contradictions she could not reconcile. Then she lost proximity. Friends who had once been constant became distant, not hostile, simply unavailable. Finally, she lost audience. Her attempts to reassert relevance fell flat because attention had already moved on. Victor disappeared entirely. He did not issue statements. He did not defend himself. He did not contact me again. He vanished from the social circle with the speed of someone who understood when exposure outweighed benefit. His absence became confirmation enough for those who had doubted his role. Nina told me later that Sophia had blamed him publicly after realizing he would not help salvage her version. That tactic failed. Blame without participation collapses quickly. At work, consequences arrived without ceremony. Laura kept her distance, but relayed what she could without betraying boundaries. Sophia's credibility had eroded. Not because of rumors, but because of inconsistency. The story she told before the party did not align with the one she told after. The story she told in meetings did not align with the one circulating socially. Trust did not collapse in a single incident. It thinned gradually until it could no longer support her. She asked to meet one last time. Not at a cafe. Not in public. She suggested a park, open space, daylight, visibility without intimacy. I agreed, not because I owed her closure, but because unfinished conversations tend to echo longer than necessary. She arrived late. Not dramatically late. Just enough to assert a familiar imbalance. She sat beside me on a bench rather than facing me. She stared forward instead of at my face. She told me she never expected it to end like this. She said she thought we were strong enough to survive one bad night. She said she believed I would protect her image the way she had protected mine. She said she never imagined silence could do this much damage. I told her silence had not done anything. I told her people had listened closely once the noise stopped. She asked if I hated her. I told her hatred required investment. That answer landed harder than I intended. She turned toward me then, searching my face for something she could recognize. What she found unsettled her. I was not angry. I was not vindictive. I was finished. She told me she felt punished beyond reason. I told her consequences were not punishments. They were results. She asked if there was any version of the past where this could have ended differently. I told her yes. Then I told her that version required honesty long before the party. She did not argue. That was the last time we spoke. The practical aftermath unfolded over weeks. Wedding plans were canceled without announcement. Vendors processed refunds quietly. Guests received neutral updates. No explanations were offered. The absence of drama frustrated some, disappointed others, but it denied Sophia the stage she needed to reshape the ending. Friends recalibrated. Some reached out months later, unsure where to stand. Some never did. Relationships reorganized around the truth without formal acknowledgement. Ethan remained constant. Nina remained distant but respectful. Laura disappeared entirely from the periphery of my life, having done what she believed was necessary and nothing more. As for me, stability returned unevenly. There were nights when fragments replayed without warning. The hallway, the room, the certainty on Sophia's face when she said I could not prove anything. Those moments faded slowly, replaced by quieter realizations. The most enduring one surprised me. I did not feel humiliated by the party. I felt relieved it happened in front of witnesses. That visibility prevented revision. It anchored memory. It forced honesty into spaces where it had been avoided. Months later, I learned Sophia had left her job. Not fired. Not formally dismissed. She left before evaluation cycles could crystallize opinion into record. The move was framed as growth, reinvention, a new chapter. It fooled no one who mattered. Her social presence thinned. Not erased, but diminished. The kind of reduction that comes from trust withdrawn quietly. I never responded to her final attempt at contact. It was a single message, neutral in tone, asking if I would ever be open to talking again. I did not block her. I did not reply. I let the message exist unanswered, not as punishment, but as boundary. That was the final consequence. Not isolation. Not embarrassment. Irrelevance. The party that began everything faded into anecdote, then into footnote. The engagement dissolved into history. The shock softened into lesson. What remained was clarity. Some betrayals do not end with shouting or spectacle. They end with systems adjusting and people losing access to narratives they once controlled. I did not win. I exited intact. And that, in the end, was enough.